I'm going to call this meeting to order now. It is 6:34 on September 29, 2022, and this is a public meeting of the City of Portland Police Accountability Commission. Tonight, your facilitators are myself and Ayumide Nixie. If the Spanish language interpreters, Luis and Gabby, can please explain the information on Spanish language interpretation now, that would be wonderful.
Buenas noches, son las 6:34. Esta es una reunión pública y vamos a comenzar en este momento. Esta reunión pertenece a la Comisión de Responsabilidad Policial. Si usted necesita interpretación en español, en la parte inferior derecha de la pantalla va a haber un icono, un pequeño globo. Haga clic ahí y selecciona la opción español.
Thank you so very much. The city also offers ASL interpretation, which is being provided by Aaron and Mary. You can pin their video feed if that is helpful to you. Finally, the closed captioning is turned on in Zoom as another means of assistance. But please note this is an automatic captioning service and it is not always accurate. The city supports access to meetings of the Police Accountability Commission and can provide other language support as well. Please email in advance of future public meetings, either as a response to a public meeting notice or directly to policeaccountability@portlandoregon.gov to ask for access assistance, including interpretation into other languages. This meeting is a public meeting subject to City of Portland Administrative Code and Oregon state law and is being recorded. For this meeting, the chat function is enabled for commission members to communicate with each other. Members of the public will be able to ask questions using the Zoom Q&A feature. As the commissioners are presenting and/or discussing things, if attendees have questions, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A. We hope to use this feature to help guide our conversations during the meeting and future meetings' agenda topics. We'd like to be clear that not all questions will be answered during the meeting, but if answered, both the question and the answer will be visible to you and will become part of the meeting record. To access this feature, just click on the Q&A icon in the middle of your screen. If we could stop, if we could stop sharing for a moment, I would like to hand the meeting to the co-chairs.
Sure. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Lavisa Lloyd. I use she and her pronouns. I'm a co-chair of the full commission during this phase. And I just wanted to say something really quickly about land acknowledgements. Although the city has asked for a moratorium on land acknowledgements, the co-chairs have received a request from a PAC member that some form of land acknowledgement continue. We would like to recognize the limits of any land acknowledgement and the harm that can be done by an inadequate or disrespectful land acknowledgement. We are working to find a respectful way to continue to center Indigenous voices. And that said, if we could please take a moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like us to review the community agreements. Please read them silently to yourself, and I will call to ask Ayumide to forward the slide in just a moment. Next slide. Thank you. May I have a thumbs up or some sort of indication that we are in agreement with the community agreements? Thank you so very much. Jason, Eric, Obi, Tirsa, Sophia, just making sure that I see some sort of thumbs up. Thank you very much. Next slide, please. All right, co-chairs.
All right, the commission is currently in the fact-finding phase of work, which is slated to end next Thursday, October 6th. It includes hearing from key stakeholders, identifying barriers to accountability in Portland presently, and examining systems of accountability from other jurisdictions. It also includes increased community engagement work. Future phases of work will develop the parameters of the new police accountability system before the Commission presents that to the City Council in 2023 for their consideration and approval. Following today's meeting, the next two meetings are the final meeting of the Subcommittee on Research, which is next Monday, October 3rd, and the full Commission meeting next Thursday, October 6th. The authors of Charter Section 210 will brief the Commission at a full Commission meeting on Monday, October 17th. This slide is the current project plan for the fact-finding phase of the Police Accountability Commission's work. It's not their agendas, and it is updated regularly. This slide is for members of the public to be able to understand how the Commission gets from now through the end of the phase, which focuses on identifying areas of agreement among Commission members as to barriers to accountability in the current system, best practices from Portland and other jurisdictions, and suggestions to consider from experts, as well as taking public comment and meeting with key stakeholders. Today's meeting is in the blue box with the purple border in the upper right-hand portion of the screen. This slide shows the outcome documents for the fact-finding phase. The first one is being developed in the Subcommittee on Research and will be referred to the full Commission by the Subcommittee. The second document was referred by the Subcommittee on Research to the full Commission this past Monday and will be discussed today. The final document is being developed directly at the full Commission and is also on today's agenda. All right. Today's meeting agenda has two primary purposes, the two documents that were just mentioned. First, we will discuss the draft areas of agreement on barriers to police accountability and best practices in Portland. This document has been discussed and adapted a few times at the full Commission. Prior to today's meeting, a final draft was circulated and members of the Commission were asked to give any final proposed changes via email. Those have been collected into a draft document in track changes format for members to go through today and finalize text. It is likely that the PAC will be asked to make a formal decision on this document today. Second, we will discuss the draft areas of agreement on proposals to consider or avoid from subject matter experts. This document was referred to the Commission by the Subcommittee on Research 3 days ago and circulated to the membership. Members were asked to give any proposed changes via email, and those have been collected into a draft document in track changes format for the Commission to go through today and finalize text. It is possible that the Commission is ready to make a decision on this document today, and it's also possible that the document is near complete at the end of the meeting and wrapped up quickly at the next meeting next Thursday. There will also be time for public comment during today's meeting, as well as time for some more of the transition tasks for the phases of work transition that is coming up.
Thank you so very much. I am now going to pass the meeting over to the co-chairs of the Subcommittee on Community Engagement Events, Co-Chair Tirsa and Co-Chair Christian, to give a brief update on the progress of the subcommittee's work.
Hello. Tirsa, do you want to share, or do you care if I do? It doesn't matter either way.
Go for it.
Okay, cool. There isn't too much of an update. I managed to get a response from Apano, kind of a slow, like week by week, every few weeks we respond to each other type of conversation. So a little bit of progress there, but not a ton. I haven't seen very much. I haven't seen any CC'd emails from other people's member lead groups or anything like that. I think we're a little bit of a limbo state because we're transferring phases and whatnot. We did have a meeting with Austin, I forget her last name, but she just got hired on to do full-time work with the community engagement stuff. And we talked to her about maybe clarifying some of how that work is going to continue on past this phase. So members of the subcommittee can expect that, as well as the full commission. I think we're going to talk about that at some point down the line. That's kind of the general update that I have. I don't know if Tirsa might have something else that I forgot.
No, just to echo what you've said, the community engagement planning and events will continue into the next phase of work. And then Austin Foster will be working alongside the commission and member leads with community engagement work. And it's my understanding that I think the subcommittee of community engagements will no longer be a subcommittee, but the town hall events will still be taking place, and report backs will be happening at the all staff, at the all PAC meetings. Correct me if I'm wrong, staff.
Staff, please.
Yeah, just to clarify, the decision on what the subcommittees will be for the next phase has not yet been made. That's something that follows after the selection of co-chairs and a couple other transition tasks. But the subcommittees that exist for this phase of work were only created for the duration of this phase of work. So unless there's a reason or a decision, I should say, unless there's a decision to extend or create a similar structure for the next phase of work, both of the subcommittees will end, and for the subcommittee on community engagement will end, community engagement events will end at the end of the phase of work. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarity. Any other questions? Very good. I'd now like to pass it over to co-chairs of the Subcommittee on Research, Co-Chair Sophia and Co-Chair Angie, to give a brief update on the progress of the subcommittee's work.
Hey there. The research subcommittee met on Monday night, and unfortunately I had to miss that meeting, but I do believe that that meeting was productive and worked on the documents of agreement. I'm sorry, I know that I'm naming that something incorrectly, for the SMEs, the subject matter experts, or the experts in the field. And we are still working on the document for recommendations from other jurisdictions. And tonight, I think, please correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Moses, but I think we are going to be working on finalizing the areas of agreement for subject matter experts. Yay, I got it right. Thank you so much. And just by chance, I ran into Ayamidi in 3D yesterday, so that was very exciting. And now that I'm seeing her, I have to smile about that and tell everybody, because it was just the best. So anyway, so yeah, that's where we are with the subcommittee, I think. But please, Commissioner Sophia, step in and correct me if I am incorrect with any of that information, or any of the facilitators. Please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Angie.
Hopefully we will be able to review the subject matter experts this evening. If not, we will do it the next meeting and Monday is our, as Sid mentioned earlier, is our final meeting for research.
We're having a
Drafts.
difficult time hearing you, Commissioner Sophia. Sorry.
So sorry. I'm so sorry.
It's
I'll
okay.
just let it go then. She was great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, then. We'll now move into a discussion of the draft areas of agreement on the barriers to police accountability and best practices in Portland. It's likely that today co-chairs will ask if there is consensus on approving this document. Prior to that, though, there will be an opportunity to work through unfinished discussions and proposed changes received via email, section by section. Next slide, please. Okay. This is an open discussion and we ask you to follow our normal discussion rules. Please be brief each time you speak, even though you can speak multiple times. Please be facilitated and remember that the commission uses a weighted stack for discussions. Finally, please be forward-looking in your comments. Would the co-chairs like to frame the discussion and then get it started?
Sure. Can everybody hear me okay? Thanks. I just dropped my speaker, so I want to make sure. All right. Thanks, everyone. Very exciting day. We are getting to a place where we're in a pretty good spot, I would say, with this document, and we've received many rounds of edits. So thank you to everyone who has reviewed it and reviewed it and reviewed it. I really appreciate it. We really appreciate it, and I think it's better for it. So today we're going to be going through the document, and I just want to emphasize that today we will, if we are making changes or when we are making changes today, we will be aiming to make text changes. So if you have suggestions, please make sure that they are text oriented or word oriented. And I think the way that we're going to structure this is we're going to put it up on the screen. I'll read a heading. You can read the rest to yourself, and then we'll ask for comments and ask if we can move on. And yeah, so I think that that's where we're gonna start, and happy to take folks' comments as we go through this document. So I think we'll begin at the beginning. I think we do have a few items that Commissioner Faith put into an email very helpfully, and sort of sent out as points of discussion that we know we're going to be having within this document. So yeah, so we'll take those things one by one as we get to them. All right, so beginning at the beginning, you can see this is the heading, our intro paragraph. I'll give everyone a moment. Does everyone feel okay about that? Can we move on? All right. If you have any comments, I may not see you just because of Zoom and everything. So if I don't catch it or the facilitator doesn't catch it, please, raise your hand or, unmute yourself or something, be a shout out, be heard. It's really important. All right. Heading to the first item under, sorry, staff, could you scroll up just a little bit? Just a little bit. Yes. Yeah. Okay, great. So our first section of this document, our first barrier is lack of transparency. And you see we have our intro paragraph and then our first identified barrier. Number one, community members have difficulty understanding the administrative complaint process and receive little or no support from the current system. And I'll give everyone a little time to take a look.
Commissioner Dan.
Thank you, Dr. Moses. I'm Dan Handelman, he, him pronouns. I'm a member of the commission. I've read over this document a number of times, and I'm just noticing that the last sentence of the intro paragraph on this section, lack of transparency, says further necessary transparency, community accountability does not exist. That contradicts a little bit what we said in the other half of this document. So I think it should say further full and necessary transparency for community accountability does not exist. So that way we're not counteracting the little transparency there is, but there is some.
Thank you, Dan. All right, we'll give everyone else a little time to take a look at this text. Most of this text I think you will have seen before. And if you have any other comments, any words, okay, do we have any other comments on this portion?
I don't see any hands raised on this side.
Can we move on?
Well, so I think we actually need to do consensus on changes that we make to this document tonight. So
You're right. Yep.
yeah. So is there any strong opposition to Dan's edit to add the words full and before necessary transparency? Is there a general agreement to add that text? We'll come off so that we can see. Okay, I think that I am seeing general agreement. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Okay, I think that we can scroll down just a little bit. And I'll give everyone some time to look over investigation. And if you have any textual changes you would like to propose, please raise your Zoom hand.
I do not see any Commissioner Lovisa.
All right, we have no comments on this. All right, I will ask staff if we can keep going, if we can scroll down just a little bit more. All right, item 2 under lack of transparency. Important parts of the accountability process are inaccessible to the public. And I'll give everyone some time to read over, in particular, investigation and public nature of meetings. And we do have a proposed text change, it looks like. Does anyone have any other text changes before we discuss this one?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, seeing none. We have a proposed text change. It is, so the previous text was the Police Review Board executive session is a double closed door meeting, even to the officer involved. We felt that was a bit confusing because we had no definition of what a double closed door meeting is. Commissioner Dan helpfully suggested some language. While officers can attend the PRB meetings, like the community, they are not allowed into PRB executive sessions. For the community, this makes those sessions double closed door meetings. Is there any strong opposition to the addition of this language? or sorry, any discussion, any comments?
I don't see
see
any.
hands.
Yep.
Okay. Any strong opposition?
Again, I don't see any hands either.
Okay. Do we have general agreement about adding this language to clarify this? All right. I feel I see general agreement. Thank you so much, everyone. Oh. So, sure. Sorry, I saw Sophia's hand.
I think it might.
It was a general agreement hand.
General agreement. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Hard to tell. They should really make
Waving hands or something.
multiple emojis. Yeah. All right. I will give everyone a moment to look at law and policy. And if you would like to propose any text changes to that section, please do so. Do we have any comments?
I don't see any hands up on this side. And can I make a suggestion
Sure.
for, since a lot of people do have their screens off?
Mhm.
If folks are using the emojis, if they use thumbs up for when they're in agreement and then their hand raised for when they actually have a question, that might make it more easy for people to
I
decide.
don't know that I can do that. I think I only have raise hand available
Oh,
on my version of Zoom.
well,
I think it's hand or nothing.
well, never mind then.
Well,
Yeah.
if you go into the chat function, Lavisa, there's a little smiley face next to that's where the other emojis exist.
Yes, thank you.
Raise hand is on the main bar, but then if you go into the chat function, do you see a little smiley face there next to like the file? That,
Oh, I do see it.
yeah,
That's where the thumbs up lives.
that offers you a thumbs up there and other options as well.
Okay, so you can put that in the chat. Okay, thank you. Pro tip. I appreciate that.
I knew you could use
Really
it.
sorry
Thank you much.
really sorry to throw a wrench into it. We have been asked by city attorneys to not have it be in the chat.
Oh, that's
So
right.
that a person, a member of the public who is watching the video of this can see everything in one place instead of trying to sync up the chat. And our city attorney is not here at this moment, so and that's, she said that a while ago, so I want to make sure that's covered. So please, I think what co-chair Lavisa had said earlier of hand or nothing is technically accurate under the city attorney's advice for public meetings law. Thank you.
Okay, so never mind.
Well, we're figuring it out as we go along. That is fine. Does anyone have any proposed comments, any proposed textual changes to the text we just saw? Law and policy.
I don't see any hands.
All right. In that case, let's move on. I'll give everyone some time to look at reporting of administrative outcomes and reporting of criminal outcomes. And again, if you have any proposed changes to this text, we would love to hear it. We welcome it.
I don't see any hands.
All right, thanks. In that case, let's move on. And if we ever are moving on too quickly, please just speak up and let us know. We can slow down. All right, next section, complexity within the current system. This is an intro paragraph, and we have a couple of quotes here that were added. They're quotes from PPB leadership supporting the idea that law enforcement agrees that the current system is too complex. So I'll just give everyone a moment to look at those quotes and that language in general. And if you have thoughts, ideas, feelings, suggestions, or would like changes, please raise your hand.
I don't
Oh.
see any hands.
I do have a small change. I think under the first quote, I think it's if you draw a flow chart of our system. Pretty minor.
Do you
Any
want to ask
comments?
for general agreement
Um,
of the change?
yeah, do we have general agreement about adding the word a? Thank you, everyone.
I know.
All right. Seeing no other comments, let's move on. All right, part 3, some parts of the current system are duplicative, confusing, and contradictory. And I'll give everyone some time to read to themselves recommended findings. And we do have one proposed text change that we can talk about in a moment. But I'll give everyone just a moment to look this over. Do we have any other comments? Any textual suggestions? All right, seeing none. Seeing none, we do have a proposed change from Commissioner Dan. It looks like the change is the addition of some language. The addition is with the exception of cases which go to City Council as provided in City Code, comma, the police chief or commissioner in charge makes the ultimate final decision on findings. So I think this is just clarifying and narrowing this slightly. Any comments on that? And also, is there any strong opposition to this change? Okay, seeing none, do we have general consensus around making this change?
We do.
Right.
Yep. Okay.
Sorry.
Yep. Good.
We do. Okay, great. Thanks. It's hard for me to see down the periscope of Zoom. All right. If there are no other comments, then I would suggest that we move on. Oh, sorry, Charlie.
Just real quick, I was wondering if we could have like consistency and first asking if there's any strong opposition and then general consensus.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Because I get confused.
I think that is a best practice for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, can we move on?
Commissioner Obi.
Mm-hmm.
Hey guys, just real quick. I was wondering if there's ever a decision made on whether or not there's going to be abbreviations either in the top or bottom of the whole document for each individual document presented. For people, because we use things that we understand now pretty fluidly, but if someone was reading the document, whether or not they would need like certain abbreviations in the beginning.
Could you maybe expand a little bit on what you mean by abbreviations?
So like if it wasn't like originally texted of saying like or an acronym guide. Sorry.
Oh, acronym guide.
Yeah,
yes. I think that's a terrific idea. There are so many acronyms, and it has taken me like 8 months to learn them. So
yeah, exactly.
And I'm still learning them. So
yeah, but they're like or if like in the summation of things that we say, if there's like a big acronym guide too, I'm not necessarily thinking it needs to be on every document, but if this is presented, then maybe it does. Well, thank you.
Thanks. I think that's a wonderful suggestion, and I think that is the type of suggestion where even if we do vote on this document today, we can always vote on it with the understanding that there is one fairly simple thing that needs to be added to it. And I think that this falls under that category. So thank you. Actually, I guess, is there any strong opposition to the creation of an acronym guide or a legend of some kind? Do we have general support, general consensus around the idea of adding that? Great, thank you, everyone. All right, moving on. Complainants are not offered access to an official advocate to help them navigate the process until close to the end of the process during the appeals phase. And I'll give everyone a moment to look over the complainant experience language. And can we scroll up a little bit, I think? Or sorry, scroll down a little. Yes, yeah. All right, is anyone seeing any textual changes they would like to make? Any amendments to this language? All right, seeing none, I suggest we move on. Number 5, officer-involved shootings and other deadly force cases are treated differently from other misconduct investigations. And same, I'll give everyone a moment. Does anyone see any text changes that they would like to make or suggest at this time on this section?
Don't see any hands.
All right, thank you. Let's move on. And I think that my co-chair, Commissioner Faith, may be taking over.
Yes, happy to.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Faith Aiken. I use she, her pronouns. I'm one of the co-chairs for this phase of the work. My apologies, I have my camera off. I'm not feeling tip-top, but well enough to get us through this. So similar to La Visa, we are moving on to accessibility and equity. I will read out loud the bolded sections and let you all read. So number 6, there are direct barriers to participation in all aspects of the current accountability system to people based on their ability, housing status, mental health, socioeconomic status, and more. Want to check in? Are there any text changes needed in this section? I don't see any hands raised. Yeah, Commissioner Obi.
Unmute.
Sorry about that. Just the first line in the accessibility and equity section. It says the system's lack of transparency and complexity, which
Oh, I see.
It's complex and it is a lack of transparency. So those two together would be separate. It would be a plural statement. So kind of to finishing that off, like it wouldn't be is, it would be are already acknowledged barriers. And that's also quite just semantics, but they're two separate things at that point, you know?
Thank you. Lovisa.
Sure. I guess I maybe would just ask the group. I'm not sure if that's the correct appellation for Casey Lewis. I know that Casey Lewis is an attorney, but I don't know whether they are a doctor. So does anyone know if Casey Lewis is in fact a doctor?
Jason?
Jason?
We're not hearing you.
Yeah, you're on mute. He's a lawyer. Yes. It says that he's a lawyer.
Okay.
So I guess my proposed text change would be Casey Lewis JD or Casey Lewis attorney. Sure.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay. Any strong opposition to the system's complexity and lack of transparency are already acknowledged barriers. We good with these changes as they are?
I see hands. All good.
That's all. We good with changing Dr. Lewis to their appropriate JD? Thank you. Okay, next section. Staff, if you wouldn't mind, let's, yeah, at the top of usability. Okay, give you all a moment to read. Okay, any text changes needed in this section?
I don't see any hands.
Is there any strong opposition? I don't think I need to ask that, right?
No.
Cool. Great. Okay, number 7, parts of the accountability system which impose a burden on all participants disproportionately. Hold on, I'm sorry, my cadence on reading this. Parts of the accountability system which impose a burden on all participants disproportionately burden community members who are part of historically excluded groups. Give you all a moment to read.
Stan, Commissioner?
I'm wondering if the repetition of the word burden there sounds a little strange. Would it mean the same thing if we took one of them out? Like if we said parts of the accountability system which impose a burden, or wait, parts of the accountability system on disproportionately burden community member? I'm just trying to figure out a way to, it sounds a little funky to me. I'm not sure if other people share that or not. I'm just curious to throw that out. If not, then we can keep it, but I'm just curious if we took one away, would that mean the same thing, or is it necessary to have both?
So parts of the accountability system disproportionately burden community members. So we could just cut which impose a burden on all participants.
Yeah, or yeah, that could work. Yeah. Or if there's another word instead of burden for the second one, just the repetition sounds a little weird to me. I don't know if anyone else has a suggestion. I just wanted to flag that because I don't have an answer. I just, in my head, it sounded weird.
A suggestion is effect, impact from Lisa.
Commissioner Charlie?
I was going to wait and see what they come up with. So it just seems like all participants. Doesn't that include community members or vice versa? And who, yeah. So isn't that kind of also doubling up on this?
Yeah, I could see that as well.
Yeah. And or at least put some commas in there.
Okay, I'm going to read it out loud again with the new proposed words. Parts of the accountability system, comma, which impose a burden on all participants, disproportionately impact community members who are part of historically excluded groups. Okay, I see a couple nodding heads. Commissioner Dan.
Wow, this is going to be the biggest controversial thing we're going to say all night. That first comma doesn't belong there. We're saying parts of the accountability system which impose a burden on all participants. Personally, yeah, actually, I don't think the second comma belongs there either.
Should we take longer to add or minus more commas? Just kidding. Okay, Lisa.
Okay, what if we changed it to burdensome parts of the accountability system disproportionately impact community members?
Hold on.
Sorry, did you mean at the beginning?
Yeah. So like starting at the beginning, it would just like, yeah, put burdensome at the beginning and then cut a bunch of words in the middle.
Okay, I'll read it again. Burdensome parts of the accountability system disproportionately impact community members who are part of historically excluded groups. Great. Okay. First question, any strong opposition to this change in wording? Seeing none, are we cool with the changes? Thank you. Great. Thanks, y'all. Okay, let's move. Well, I'll let you do that, Samir. You're so quick. Were there any other text changes in the body under policy or culture?
I'm not seeing any hands.
Cool. Let's move to the next section.
I would like to ask that we take a break here between our sections. And I suggest 5 minute break.
Great.
Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. Diving back into our document. Commissioner Faith.
Okay, welcome back. We're on perception and trust. I'm gonna read number 8. There is a current perception by both community members and law enforcement that the accountability system is opaque, unfair, and unjust. Give you all a moment to read. Okay, are there any text edits in this section?
I don't see any hands.
Great, let's move down, please. And before we move on to laws and policy, this final one is investigative process. Any text changes? Cool. Let's move. Oh, Commissioner Monica.
Yeah, hi, Monica Arce. I'm one of the commissioners. Should we say an ex-employee of PPB, the last line in investigative process? Because, oh, no, or so, okay. So,
Hold on, Monica, I want to make sure I understand. So under the sentence, it is confusing, frustrating, and intimidating.
yes, are we saying that the
Oh.
investigator is an ex-employee of PPB, or are they employees of PPB?
They can be employees of
Okay.
PPB.
Okay, it's all good.
Commissioner Dan? You're on mute.
Yeah, I think that's kind of confusing to try to phrase this, because there's at least one IPR investigator who's a former PPB, and the majority of the internal affairs investigators are former PPB, but having been hired to do that job, they are currently employees of the PPB. So I'm not quite sure what's the best way to phrase that.
Could we say
with a current member?
Current or former? Okay. Is there any strong opposition to this adjustment? Second question, are we good with the change? Great. All right, let's move forward. And Monica, I loved hearing drum practice at your house. All right, current laws and policies. I'll read number 9 aloud. Oh. Okay, I'm going to read number 9 aloud and then we'll address some of these comments. The current system is governed and protected by several layers of local, state, and federal law and policy, including and especially labor law. And then this is one of the questions that was unresolved from our colleague, Commissioner Ajay. And thank you, Commissioner Dan, for your comment. So I guess the question was, is this appropriate? Is this the appropriate place to include information around sort of the political power that PPA holds? Question mark. Lovisa, you had your hand up.
I was gonna ask Dan to explain his comment because I read it, but I didn't feel like I understood exactly what he was getting at.
All right. Well, thank you. So from the one I see on the screen is about not using the word union. We do a lot of work with actually, labor unions that work for companies, not for the city and carry guns around. And when they have a strike, the people are going to come and hit them on the head with a baton to stop them from picketing are the police. So they don't actually show solidarity with other unions. They're called an association. They're not part of the AFL-CIO. So I just, I know it's kind of late in the process for me to bring this up, but I'd feel more comfortable saying a collective bargaining unit there. But I think there's a second comment a little later on where I tried to address the comment that you were talking about, Co-Chair Aiken. And I don't know if you scroll down to find it or if I have to go back and find the comment I said in this afternoon. But yeah, there it is. Okay, thank you.
Oh yeah, thanks. Thanks, Commissioner Dan. So let me read aloud your suggestion. So in response to Commissioner Ajay's point, our colleague Dan created some language. So under law,
current labor laws favor the bargaining unit's input over the communities. So want to check in with folks. 2 places. The change from the police union to the collective bargaining unit. First question, is there any strong opposition to that change? Second, are we good with this change? I see some hands.
I got just a question on that.
Yeah, please.
I mean, current labor laws, I mean, I think the laws may make it look like that, but I don't think labor laws like said, hey, which one do we favor, right? I mean, the labor laws didn't have the community in mind. It wasn't done this or that. So I don't know if we're making it sound like there was a conscious choice in labor law to ignore the will of the community in favor of law enforcement. I mean, maybe labor law doesn't take into consideration the needs of community or something like that, as opposed to actively favors.
Okay, yeah. Let's look at the draft and so under Commissioner Eric in the bolded part of number 9.
Yeah.
So
yeah, maybe something like current labor laws do not take into consideration the input of the community, which favors the police bargaining unit, or something like that.
Great.
Don't want to make any enemies we don't need.
Okay, so we got consensus of the change of collective bargaining unit in the intro paragraph. And then oh yeah, Commissioner Obi.
Just on that track, I mean, I agree with the changes, but now throughout this document, are we okay interchangeably using collective bargaining unit for the police and police union? Because it's kind of colloquial, or do you want to completely strike police union, even though people refer to that and use it as that, just because we want us to be consistent.
Great question. Commissioner Monica.
In line with that comment, I was going to suggest that we change or we add collective bargaining units input to that sentence on law. And I think it would be a good idea to search all police union incidences and just replace it for police collective bargaining unit or collective bargaining union.
And I would like to ensure that Ajay's concern has been addressed. So I just want to make sure to bring Ajay's voice into this and ask you to.
They're here.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, can people hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I think my main concern was that the undue political influence that the police union has, not necessarily just like the labor laws, but the political influence that allows them to prioritize cops' like careers over like public safety. And I don't think that's necessarily, I mean, I think that affects the labor laws, but like, I think I was referring more to the cultural influence of the police union and the toxicity that it brings to the department, not necessarily about the labor laws. I don't know if that makes sense.
Commissioner Faith?
Yeah, thanks, Ajay. Okay. So I'm just going to keep moving down and then let's perhaps with the addition of some language to reflect what you just said, Ajay. So Samir, we accepted the top change, current or former employee of PPB. We have accepted collective bargaining unit. It looks like we have not talked about accepting the law section, and it seems perhaps we should add another section to reflect, or we could add another section to reflect what Audrey just said, and I see lots of hands up. So Dr. Moses, I'll let you do that.
Yes, I'm gonna go with staff first and then Commissioner Dan.
Yeah, just wanted to ask, I'm not sure that we did in fact accept this one yet, of the collective bargaining unit, and also whether or not you prefer to have kind of a singular decision of the commission as to Commissioner Obie's question, essentially, as to whether or not to do it across the board or to allow the terms to be used interchangeably. So that's more of a rhetorical question. I'll pass back, but yeah.
I also say Ajay's hand up too. I'm not sure if that's still standing or from before. Or...
It's about something else. If you want to go to the other hands and then come back.
Okay, Commissioner Faith, I think we need to address Obie's question first.
Okay, so first question, is there any strong opposition to changing police union to collective bargaining unit? Friend, the PPA. Dan has strong opposition. Okay, Commissioner Dan.
Yes, I was trying to raise my hand before you got to that question. Actually, it should say collective bargaining units, plural, and we should not name a specific one. We can call it the associations, plural associations, instead of union throughout. But we have forgotten throughout this process that there's a second bargaining unit, the commanding officers union, so to speak, the Portland Police Commanding Officers Association, the PPCOA, and they have a contract that's very similar to the one by the PPA. We didn't invite them to speak. They represent the lieutenants, but that's a similar obstacle to the PPA. So we should be more broad and collective in the language we choose. So it should say units, and it should say or associations if you want to alternate between those two. That's my suggestion, especially when it says bargaining and bargaining twice in the same sentence.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to ask the first question again. Thanks for the recommendation. I'm going to ask it in two ways. One about the changes here, and then second about the changes throughout the document. So first question, Commissioner Charlie. Hi, friend.
Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but after it says collective bargaining units or associations, as well as the in current standard, shouldn't we remove something in there?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks so much. Okay. So first question, is there any strong opposition to the change of collective bargaining units or associations? Are we good with this change for this singular time?
I see agreement.
Commissioner Obie, do you have a?
Yeah, no, I agree to the thing that you brought up, but I don't know if we just should have a paragraph or something, or not a paragraph, like a parentheses statement saying, like, sometimes known as the police, like the police union. I don't know. I mean, since that's not an official term, but it's said so frequently, even here, that if a reader just wanted to understand that the police union or these bargaining units, and then we can change every other one, just so it's known that.
I see. Yeah.
You know.
Thank you so much. Okay, and then the second question is doing a find and replace. So throughout the document, changing police union. And if this is the first time the per OB's suggestion, this would be the first time kind of in parens. So changing. I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted by the comments. So find and replace collective bargaining units or associations throughout the document instead of police union. Is there any strong opposition to that? And seeing none, are we okay with making that change throughout the document? Charlie, do you have a question?
Yes. So we're not going to include the sometimes known as?
I think the thought is we'll say sometimes known as in the first place where it's mentioned. And then the rest of the time would be collective bargaining units.
Okay.
Okay.
I think technically we should vote on that. Some also known as parentheses change. I don't think we technically voted on that. Sorry.
No, it's good. So are we good with sometimes known as?
Just to clarify, it's also known as right now. Do you want me to change it to sometimes known as? The original statement was also.
Also known as. Let's have some finger wavies if we're good with also known as. Okay. Thanks, y'all. I'm sorry that was a little confusing. And then before we move on to the law section, I know Commissioner Ajay, you've had your hand up and would love to hear your question / comment.
You're on mute.
Can you hear me? Sorry, I
Yes.
like a second ago, my connection just crapped out. You can
Okay.
hear me?
Yes.
Now we can.
Okay. Yeah, it was just in regards to the previous one. I had arrived like right when you were doing that, so now it's kind of ideas are flowing about it, and I mentioned the culture of that the union brings, but there's also the issue of the culture of like the thin blue line and the warrior mentality that creates like us versus them mentality that encourages police to lie.
I think we lost her.
And my connection's going in and out, so I'll just put it in the chat.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Ajay. It was a little difficult. I kind of caught some of what you were mentioning. So if you're cool to put it in the chat, that would be great. And I'm happy to read it out loud for you. And then I saw, Dan, you mentioned that there is a culture section. So perhaps we can, if it's appropriate, put a pin in that, and it may be an addition into the culture section. So staff, would you mind sharing the screen again?
Just
so we,
one moment, yes.
Thank you. And then we can look at the law, the addition of the new law section. Thank you so much. Okay. So I want to check in on this newly added section. Law, current labor laws do not take into consideration the input of the community, which favors the police collective bargaining unit's input. Is there any strong opposition to this? Staff?
I think Co-Chair Louisa might be about to say it, so I'll defer to them, to Louisa first.
Well, the way that it's written now, it sounds like it's the input of the community that favors the collective bargaining unit's input. So maybe we need to split up these thoughts a little bit more. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I completely understand what I think there's maybe two underlying thoughts here. Okay, current labor laws do not take into consideration the input of the community.
I'm going to show it without track changes, showing just until it's good, and then revert back to a track changes view after the changes are still being tracked. They're just not showing right now because it's a little messy otherwise.
Commissioner Dan.
Yeah, my suggestion is just to take the sentence the way it was a minute ago and change the word which to the words but rather. I think that will fix it.
But rather favors, not just but rather, yeah.
Commissioner Dan, you're muted.
Sorry, I'm losing track of when I'm getting muted or not. It should be favor because it's labor laws plural. So that's the way it was in the pre-track change. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thanks y'all. I'll read it again. Current labor laws do not take into consideration the input of the community, but rather favor the police collective bargaining unit's input. Is there any strong opposition to this addition? Seeing none, are we good with accepting this section? I see some hands. Okay, great. Thanks, y'all. Thank you, Samir. And for those, if we could, I'm sorry, I don't remember if we got to the policy section, but maybe let's read policy. Okay, any text changes here?
I don't see any hands.
Great. Okay, 10. The standard of review is too deferential to police in the appeal process. Give you a moment. Are there any text changes here needed? Seeing none. Okay, great. Let's move to the next section and I will hand it back to Co-Chair Lloyd.
Sure. All right. Okay, so I see that Commissioner Ajay wrote something in the chat, and I just wanted to read it in really quick. And I'll read it in really quick. The previous section talked about barriers to investigation, and I was just saying the warrior training they receive creates an us versus them mentality that encourages lying to protect police as individuals and the department overall at the expense of public safety. All right, thank you, Jay. And if there's maybe textual changes, I was going to say this seems like a culture item, and we do have a culture section later, a little farther down in the document. So if you have suggestions, maybe we can work those in there. All right, effectiveness. I'll go ahead and, Okay, I'll do what Faith did. I'll read the first section and then we can go to some of these comments. The current system does not reduce misconduct. Okay, and then taking a look at these comments, I see that we had sort of a thread about training, and Commissioner Tirsa had mentioned that Christopher Paye had said there was no ongoing anti-racism training after onboarding. Not sure if this fits here or under culture. Commissioner Kiana said agree, also support adding in as much about racial justice and equity as possible. I believe there were some rewrites. Commissioner comment Tirsa moved to under effectiveness. All right. Commissioner comment Ajay, bias trainings are dependent upon the intent of people doing that. People who are there because they have to be, they're not going to change because they don't have a vested interest to change. There's data showing that if you come in with a bias and didn't want to be there, training actually hardens biases. So we have some comments here.
Yeah, Lavisa, I think Commissioner Dan added some language below.
Yeah, I was going to say, I believe we have a suggestion, a text suggestion, but if anyone else has any text suggestions that they haven't seen added that they would like to see added based on those comments. Actually, wait, sorry, staff, could you go back to that suggested change so we could just see? All right, so this is the language suggested. Allegation of bias. Despite officers being offered training on bias, there is no movement seen in upholding disparate treatment allegations and little change in officer behavior. This may be due to the observation that people who already harbor biases may reinforce those if they are put into mandatory training. Do we have comments about this suggested text?
Can you, what section is this under now?
That is a great question. It is under conflicts of interest / bias.
Can we put a pin in this one and then come back to it, I think?
Thanks. Yeah, Monica?
I was going to ask a question about that section on bias, but I can totally wait.
We can wait. All right. Does anyone have any other? Does anyone have any other comments first about this this first portion of effectiveness, or have any other suggestions or textual changes related to their comments in particular that are not addressed in some way or cannot be addressed in some way under the bias section?
See any hands?
Okay. All right, thanks. I think we can table that conversation until we get to bias. All right, so I'll give everyone a chance to take a look at this language that's on the screen under item 11. The current system does not reduce misconduct. And then we'll move on. We do have some comments here. Do we have any additional comments or suggestions?
I don't see any hands.
All right, seeing none, let's take a look at what has been suggested. Commissioner Catherine had suggested including a broader context of accountability here, and I believe that this is reflected in some changes that were made below under policy, culture, and discipline.
Staff.
Yeah, so just to clarify, this comment from Commissioner Catherine had come in on the 25th, and after the 15th meeting, the edit to the draft that made it discipline is not, it was accountability, this header, and it became discipline is not accountability. And I believe, and co-chairs can correct, that was in response to this comment, or an attempt to respond to this comment. The reason that it is showing as crossed out is there is a subsequent proposed change from Commissioner Dan that would change that. So it's kind of layered right now. And each of those is, up to the commission to decide how to determine, but yeah.
Okay, so is one suggestion or is one proposed edit discipline is not accountability?
Just a moment.
Sure.
So it was accountability,
and
then it went to should accept that discipline is not accountability, is what it currently is technically the draft. Apologies for the scrolling here. That is the header right now. Discipline is not accountability. And then there is a proposal from Commissioner Dan to change that to either policy or policy, culture, and discipline, as per comment you see here. All right. And I'm not sure, Commissioner Catherine could probably speak to if that even responds to that comment at all.
So I guess if I may, I would just say that I feel like the narrative statement does address my concern that the discipline only directly addresses the specific subject officer involved and does not make systemic changes nor change underlying culture. So I'm less concerned about the headings than about the text. And I think the text does capture the point I was trying to make. Thank you.
Commissioner Sophia.
I like the text, but the heading, I think it's just as important in the sense that it actually says, and without going into all the wording, what we're talking about. Discipline is not accountability. And I don't understand the policy, culture, and discipline thing in a sense, because it's only one topic, right? I don't know why you would put all that in there if there's only one issue.
Sorry. Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Commissioner Charlie, and then staff.
So is discipline a policy rather than culture? I was just also going to suggest discipline. Oh shoot, I forgot. Discipline does not produce accountability or something like that. Discipline policy does not produce accountability. I don't know, somehow time policy in there, if that's the case. Sort of asking questions versus how it should be worded. Wow.
Thank you, Commissioner Charlie. Commissioner Lovisa, and then Commissioner Dan.
Sure, we'll just bring it back. I see that so underneath item 11, the current system does not reduce misconduct. The first thing that we have is discipline, and we talk about discipline. We talk about options for discipline. We talk about letters of reprimand, et cetera, et cetera. And then I think that the intention had been to have like a slightly stronger statement about the fact that discipline is that sort of the only option, an insufficient option, something along those lines. So I understand where sort of culture and stuff can come in here. Otherwise, we could just put this whole sentence under the discipline portion. But I think that it's trying to get at something slightly different. And I think, as Commissioner Dan said, discipline is a form of accountability.
Commissioner Dan and then Commissioner Sophia.
Thank you. Yes, I appreciate Co-Chair Lloyd, your reading my full comment. So I think to get that concept back in here, what I was trying to get at by changing the header to policy, culture, and discipline is that that's what this statement is about. It's defining what we mean by accountability. We mean that the policies and the culture have to be changed in addition to the officer being disciplined for there to be accountability. So I think saying discipline is not accountability is confusing to those people who think that an officer being held accountable for something through discipline is a form of accountability. So my suggestion to fix this is to use the header I suggested, policy, culture, and discipline, but then have the language say discipline, while a form of accountability, only directly addresses the specific subject officer involved. So, comma, while a form of accountability. And then that way, hopefully that encompasses all the concerns that have been brought up here.
Thank you, Commissioner Dan. Commissioner Sophia.
So my thought is, if it was a part of the previous paragraph, why does it have to have a title?
Staff, can you show again when you're ready? Thank you very much. Commissioner Faith.
Yeah, I think keeping it separate is to emphasize, like, we know that discipline does not reduce misconduct, and not only that, discipline is only a subsection of accountability. So I do think keeping it separate makes sense. Yeah.
Commissioner Sophia.
I was going to take what the commissioner just said and just use that as a heading. I can't remember exactly. You said discipline. I can't even remember exactly what you said. But if we use that as the heading of things, it seems like it hits the nail on the head to me. Can you repeat that?
Oh, limitations of discipline. Discipline is only a portion of accountability. I do wonder if we're getting very into the weeds here. So,
yeah, structural limitations.
Limitations of discipline.
I think that's what it was, what you said. That was the whole point.
Limitations of discipline, I think, is what they're trying to get at.
Any other comment on this language? Is there strong opposition to this language?
To the language, limitations of discipline?
Correct. I don't see any. Is there opposition to while a form of accountability? I don't see any. Is there general agreement to changing this statement as shown? And I see jazz hands. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Commissioner J wrote into the chat, and I'll just read it aloud. Another issue is discipline often doesn't stick, is reversed by the union. So thank you. I think that's an important point. And if we want to add textual changes, we welcome those. We welcome those text suggestions. I actually think that we do have another change, another proposed change or another comment under item 11. The current system does not reduce misconduct. I believe that there is a suggestion to alter it to it is not clear that the current system reduces misconduct. Do we have any comments or discussion on that issue? Sorry, yes, and also does not necessarily alter behavior. I think those are the two proposed changes.
Commissioner Charlie?
And why is it not clear? Seems pretty evident to me.
Commissioner Dan? Thank you, Commissioner Charlie.
Thank you, Commissioner Michelle Wesley. And this is where reading the whole comment into the record would be helpful. So it says, those in power can point to the drops in complaints, but nobody knows that that's because there's the same amount of misconduct, or maybe more people are feeling the complaining system is a waste of their time. I can't read it because it's too small, but what I'm saying is there is a drop in the number of complaints that's been coming forward. So people in power are going to tell us, oh, no, there's less misconduct because nobody's complaining. But it's more, just as likely there's just as much misconduct, but people don't like the system, so they're not filing complaints. So we don't know whether or not there's been less misconduct or not, because people aren't making complaints as much. So I think that's why we need to say it's not clear to be accurate.
Thank you, Commissioner Dan. Commissioner Charlie, anything else?
Could we put something like, it is not apparent? I mean, I don't know. I just have a real problem with that. It is not clear. Seems, regardless of what the rest of it says, that it feels so evident to so many of us that the system, that the current system reduces misconduct, when it's so obvious that it's not clear that the current system reduces misconduct, that it doesn't reduce misconduct. But I don't know, maybe that's just because of my life experience itself. I won't say anything.
Yes, Commissioner Charlie, thank you. Can we agree? Okay.
Can we read some of the stuff that's in the chat?
Yes, go right ahead.
Jay says, I prefer the original. And OB says, does not definitely. And then Jay says,
definitively, I think.
Definitively, thank you. Couldn't say it right. My tongue broke. And then Jay says, I think we can be more explicit. Dan says, change that to whether. And then Jay says, while complainants occasionally go down that could reflect the public's aversion to the system. So basically, being more explicit. And I see Faith's hands up too.
Yeah, my suggestion would be to put Commissioner Jay's last statement into the intro paragraph. Sort of what Dan's comment was explaining is a decrease in complaints does not mean the system is reducing misconduct, and then keeping that bolded language the same.
Thank you, Commissioner Faith. Staff?
Sorry, errant hand there.
Okay. Commissioner Obi.
Yeah, I think in that added statement, like a decrease in complaints does not mean the system is reducing misconduct. I think that has to be also, like the second portion says, it could reflect the public's aversion to the system. Like all that seems fair, but I think you have to make it like a bit less definitive though, right? Because like a decrease in complaints does not necessarily mean that the system is reducing misconduct. It could reflect the public's aversion to the system, right? Like even if we all agree on the something, like it's not 100% definitive one way or the other.
Thank you, Commissioner Lavisa.
Sure, I was gonna make a suggestion. I think that's a great suggestion, Obi, first of all. I was going to make a suggestion. So under the current system does not reduce misconduct. I do remember that we had a conversation about this. And I think that the point of this, because it's under effectiveness, right? And I think the point of this was that like there is no clear evidence that the current system reduces misconduct. And so I think, yeah, I think maybe saying, or there is no direct proof that the current system reduces misconduct. Those would be my textual changes. Because getting into clear, not clear, it starts to sound like this subjective statement. And I think that's where it's going to be more difficult.
So what is your suggested?
Sure. So my suggested language is
and this is for the header at 11.
For the header for number 11, yeah, where it currently says the current system does not reduce misconduct. And we were thinking it is not clear. There is no direct evidence that the current system reduces misconduct.
Thank you for that.
Or maybe, sorry, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe it should be like there is little direct evidence, because maybe they'll be like, you know, I'm sure you could probably point to some PPB numbers about something, but something that I remember feeling kind of overwhelmed by when PPA President Schmautz was here was that I kept trying to press him and ask him like, so how did you come up with disciplinary ideas? Like, are they evidence-based? Are they scientific? Like, are they peer-reviewed? And he was like, no, we pretty much just collectively bargained with the city and just showed up with like a list of ideas, and they show up with a list of ideas. And I really was not satisfied with that. So I think that was one of the underlying points of this comment.
Thank you. So you want to say there is little direct evidence. Is that the suggestion?
Yeah, actually, can we say little or no?
Yes, you can.
Yes, that would be my suggestion.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Commissioner Charlie, and then we're going to go back to Faith.
Okay, I could probably live with there's little or no direct evidence, but I mean, I still feel really uncomfortable with this when it seems like the writing is on the walls literally, and since George Floyd's murder, it's been so obvious of the system, the way it is absolutely doesn't reduce misconduct. So I'm just really very frustrated with this wording and this statement. And just wondering, was there more research that needs to be done to fix this to be more truthful?
Commissioner Sophia.
I just want to say I do agree with Commissioner Charlie, and I am thinking myself of some other ways to say that, because maybe if I just talk to her, it's like, I haven't seen, I have seen actually increases in misconduct, as she's saying. Maybe we should just say it's more publicly, as the public or as the citizens or the community has seen more. My words aren't there, so I'm sorry, but yeah, I got it. I'm trying, so I'll just keep my mouth shut until I figure something out. Thank you.
Well, what I'm seeing is strong opposition to changing 11. That's what I'm seeing here in this conversation, is that there is strong opposition to changing the words. So, staff.
Thank you, Dr. Moses. Might it be helpful to ask if there is strong opposition to keeping it the way it is? Faith, Commissioner and Co-Chair Faith's proposal had been to add this sentence and keep this the way it was above. I believe that's.
And to make the two come together.
Yeah, as one sort of, it was presented together, yes.
Yes, okay. So that's the question on the table. Can these two sentences, let's see, is there general agreement in these two sentences? Commissioner Charlie, I believe your hand is up, or are you in agreement?
Could you put those back? I didn't get a chance to read them, and also, yeah, there we go.
So a decrease in complaints does not necessarily mean that the system is reducing misconduct. It could reflect the public's aversion to the system. 11, the current system does not reduce misconduct. Commissioner Charlie, is that a question or a support of these two statements? It's a support. Okay, so may I, is there general agreement in these two statements? That would be hands if there are agreement in these two statements. Okay. Is there strong opposition to these two statements? Seeing none, I believe we can move on.
Okay, thank you. There were some comments in the chat. Jay said, maybe also efforts to decrease misconduct are not data-driven or evidence-based, but based on political decisions and collective bargaining. So is that suggested text? Because I would certainly be, I would like to suggest maybe somewhere here we could include under discipline, I think. My suggested text is the current system does not rely on evidence-based practices. To reduce misconduct. Oh, apparently we have a comment in the Q&A. I'll just read this in. The psychological literature demonstrates that punishment, i.e. discipline, can cause an exacerbation of behavior or erratic behavior. Thank you for that comment. Okay. Is there any further comment, first of all, or any further discussion on the text that's on the screen right now? Under the current system does not reduce misconduct.
I do not see any hands.
Okay. Is there strong opposition to adding the sentence, the current system does not rely on evidence-based practices to reduce misconduct?
I do not see any.
Is there general support for adding the sentence, the current system does not rely on evidence-based practices to reduce misconduct? I don't know that I'm seeing general support. Am I seeing general support? Sorry, can everybody do it one more time? Okay. Okay, I think that's closer to general support. Thank you. If we're iffy on something, we either don't need to include it or we could go to a vote. Those are kind of the options. Is there a strong opposition to adding the word necessarily to this sentence? Command counseling, when offered as a corrective action, does not necessarily alter behavior. Any strong opposition?
I don't see any.
Okay. Do we have general agreement around adding necessarily to this sentence? Great. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for your input on that. All right. 12, the current civilian accountability system lacks the comprehensive power necessary to be effective at reducing misconduct. I'll give you a moment to read it, and then we'll take a look at suggested changes. All right, first, does anyone have any textual changes they would like to offer?
I don't see any.
Okay. The proposed changes that we have, Commissioner proposal, Commissioner Dan, for example. Oh, okay, hold on. So the language now under limitations of scope, the system's limitations direct some potential complaints to be resolved in the addition of civil court instead of through an administrative system. Again, the addition of civil before courts. Civil courts focus on violations of rights, not of policy, and as a result are not the appropriate place for all types of complaints. Commissioner Dan's comment, for example, officer rudeness would not rise to the level of a civil rights violation, but should be addressed by the administrative process. And he said he thinks that addresses several comments on this. Do we have any comments on these proposed changes?
I don't see any hands.
Any strong opposition to these changes, these proposed changes? Essentially the addition of civil before courts and the change of law to rights.
Commissioner Monica.
I think putting Commissioner Dan's example into the text would help to make a stronger point.
Thank you. Any comments on that? Maybe staff will work their magic. We can see what it would look like. Is there any strong opposition to the addition of that suggestion?
I don't see any.
Okay, so we'll do the whole thing. Civil before court, law into rights, and the addition of, for example, officer rudeness would not rise to the level of a civil rights violation, but should be addressed by the administrative process. Is there any strong opposition in any part of that? Okay, hearing no strong opposition, seeing no strong opposition, do we have general consensus around adding these items? Thank you, everybody. Thank you. I know it's been a long meeting. I know. I think actually we may need to scroll up a little because I think we did not do, yeah, I'll give everyone a moment to look at participation and fact finding. Do you have any comments? Do you have any proposed changes to the text?
Obi has her hand up.
Just in the first sentence, it said the system cannot sufficiently incentivize officers. Is it cannot or does not? Is like I think the proposal would be that it could or should incentivize officers to speak more on these things.
That's a great question. Thank you, Obi.
And Commissioner Charlie also has her hand up.
Same sentence, but my question is incentivize. What about required?
As in the system does not or cannot, or, well, I don't know if cannot requires accurate, but the system does not require officers to participate.
Yeah, I mean, is that not true?
Well,
or are we trying to play nice with words by saying incentivize?
No, I think that's a really good suggestion, Charlie, and I think we should definitely consider it. That the system does not require officers to participate. Oh, sorry. Let's read the rest of the sentence. All right. So the sentence as originally written was the system cannot sufficiently incentivize officers to participate in hearings about misconduct they have allegedly committed or witnessed, nor provides consequences when officers do not participate. So it's a little bit, there's no carrot and there's no stick. I see in the chat, Commissioner Dan wrote incentivize or require. I would include both. Commissioner Faith wrote compel as a possible option, as in require or compel. Commissioner Dan also wrote nor does it provide, and that's reflected in these changes. Sophia, Commissioner Sophia.
I was going to agree that the incentivize is probably not the right word. Compel is alternative, but incentivize suggests that they're giving some, as you say, some carrot, and I don't. That just doesn't sound right to me. That's all.
Yeah. No,
Thank you.
I think I get what you're saying, Sophia. It's like I think actually we can change the sentence slightly to say they don't require them to show up and they don't penalize them when they don't show up. Monica.
I would say the system does not compel or require officers to participate in hearings. I would take out sufficiently. I would just straight up say that.
Okay. So this is what the text would look like. Oh, got a couple more suggestions. Encourage is a suggestion from Tirsa. All right, so right now we have some text. The system does not compel or require officers to participate in hearings about misconduct they have allegedly committed or witnessed, nor does it provide consequences when officers do not participate. Do folks have comments on that or strong feelings about that?
So there's someone that Dan said, Commissioner Dan said something like maybe have all three: encourage, compel, or require.
Okay. Do we have any strong opposition? Oh, sorry. Obi.
Hey, thank you. I just wanted to tease out well, I do agree with Commissioner Dan about widening the scope of it. What's the difference between what's the difference between compel and require in this sense? Like, is it a legal thing to compel someone and a require is less of a legal thing? So kind of, they both tread along the same lines.
That is a great question. If anyone knows the answer to that question, please jump in. Dan.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it is a good question. Yeah, requiring them would be something like saying, we want you to go or else you'll face discipline for it. And compelling would be, you must go under my order right now. I mean, there is a thin line between those two things, but one is kind of asking them that they have to go, and the other one is giving them direct order to go. So I think there's enough of a nuance that I would keep all three. And again, like Commissioner Oriana suggested, have encourage, compel, or require.
Okay, the proposal is on the floor. This is that we add encourage. So we would say the system does not encourage, compel, or require officers to participate in hearings about misconduct they have allegedly committed or witnessed, nor does it provide consequences when officers do not participate. Do we have any strong opposition to this language as written, or as potentially amended right now?
I don't see any.
All right, do we have general consensus around accepting this language? All right, thank you so much, everybody. I think we can move on. Okay. The current system does not demonstrably meet its required timelines. Give you a moment to read. Anything further on this? Can we move on?
Yes.
All right, seeing nothing. All right, conflicts of interest / bias coming back around. All right, go ahead and read item 14. Numerous parts of the system are designed to ensure police, rather than community members, can shape investigations and hold decision-making power. I'll give you some time to read both the intro paragraph and the first part of recommendation of findings. Do we have any comments or textual changes, I should say?
I don't see any.
Seeing none, let's move to the next section. 15, people who are making decisions about and within the system have a vested interest in the system being upheld. Take a moment and read through that. And then we'll ask for comments and we will take a look at the proposed language. Okay. Just quickly, any comments?
Commissioner Monica, want to make sure that you have an opportunity to comment here, if you have any from previously.
I'm just going to go ahead and read the proposed addition note. Well, okay, I'll read the language in. Allegations of bias. Despite officers being offered training on bias, there is no movement seen in upholding disparate treatment allegations and little change in officer behavior. This may be due to the observation that people who already harbor biases may reinforce those if they are put into mandatory training. That's the proposed text, and the comment is note I have. Oh, sorry. Note, I've added this because of Commissioner Amechi's comment, but I don't think it belongs here because it didn't come up as stated during our meetings with stakeholders and experts. I am proposing it in case the full commission wishes to add it, as this was one of the items flagged by Co-Chair Aiken. Thank you, Commissioner Dan. Do we have any strong opposition on this language?
I don't see any.
Do we have general consensus around? Oh, sorry, wait, Monica, is that a comment?
Yeah, quick comment. This may be due to the observation that people who already harbor biases may reinforce those if they're put in mandatory training. Is it an observation or is it a well-studied fact? Like, is it an observation in that, right? Or is this based on evidence?
Okay, so it's sort of a question, but if you were proposing text, would you propose?
Yeah, I would say studies have shown that forced mandatory trainings in people who harbor biases may reinforce those biases or something of the sort.
Studies have shown that mandatory trainings among people.
And maybe I should even say studies have shown that short mandatory trainings that are short mandatory trainings, because there's a difference between a 1 hour, 2 hour mandatory training and a prolonged relationship with a consulting agency that really, holds a long relationship with an organization to address these issues, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Sophia, and then Commissioner Faith.
Yes, thank you. When I'm looking at, I agree, but I don't agree with, I don't know what studies we're using to prove that point. But I had another suggestion. Possibly we could say something to the effect, despite officers being offered training and maybe even participating in bias training, there's no reduction in the disparate treatment, and there's little change in the officer's behavior. That's just a suggestion. And if we're going to say studies, we probably should cite what studies we're referring to.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Commissioner Faith.
Yeah, I was going to recommend something similar. I don't want to have to do citations. So if I think we can say
short mandatory trainings for people who harbor biases may reinforce their already held bias.
Thank you for that suggestion. Anyone else? Commissioner Sophia.
Just one more short comment. We don't have to add anything, just a thought. That, biases are not learned overnight, and they can't be trained out in short periods of time because they're learned behaviors.
Thank you. Commissioner Lavisa.
I just wanted to read, Jay had written into the chat, I think there's something to be said about the conservative or authoritarian mindset that's common among police that makes them antithetical to progress. And then Jay also dropped a link to what looks like a scholarly article or a study of some kind in the chat. Thank you, Jay. And maybe we can just read the language at the way that it looks now with these changes. Allegations of bias. Despite officers receiving training on bias, there is no reduction in disparate treatment and little change in officer behavior. Short mandatory trainings for people who already harbor biases may reinforce their already held bias. And I see Faith's hand is up.
Yeah, just a change to the bolded text of unchanging bias. I don't know. Lack of bias reduction. I'm just, allegations of bias just doesn't quite feel right.
Thank you, Commissioner Faith.
I also want to put in that Jay said the articles include other studies that can be cited.
Commissioner Charlie, then Commissioner Dan.
I was wondering if there's a place for this or a way to mention something about hiring when they're hiring, how to look for biases. I don't know exactly how that would, if this belongs here or not, or how that would be worded, but we're not looking for.
Yeah, we're not looking for solutions yet.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. Commissioner Dan.
Yeah, so I'm the one that inserted this here. I'm looking at the headline number 15 about people are making decisions. I think the word bias in this section doesn't refer to the kind of bias that this is talking about, and I suggest that we move this entire sentence we're talking about with a header underneath number 17 about there's an adversarial relationship between police and the public, because I think that it fits better there, because it's not about that institutional bias in the investigations. It's more about the culture. I hope do people agree with that? It just doesn't seem to fit under this header to me.
Commissioner Lavisa.
Sorry, staff, can you just scroll up and we can just be reminded of what section we're in right now and what other types of things are in here. So we have conflicts of interest and bias. And I think sure.
Yeah, I think the bias that when this was originally drafted, it had a different name, but it was referring to inherent tilting of the playing field in investigations primarily. And I think it eventually got shortened to bias in a way that that word can be used in multiple ways.
All right, that is my memory of it as well.
Commissioner Obi.
Yeah, I just want to, I think we've all probably been in some sort of situation where we have to do these bias trainings I have to do them like annually for my own job. And I think it is a little strongly worded in one of these sentences here, stating that there's no reduction in disparate treatment. Like, I think that the fact that that the police make them do it means that they probably believe that there is some disparate treatment. And I think one thing that we want to kind of bulletproof even our thoughts on is that they will, if someone reads this and doesn't believe in it, they will go ahead and put evidence forward that it does reduce disparate treatment. And then it's just kind of like he said, she said, even though there are articles that you guys are all referencing and sending out saying that this does work or that this doesn't work. I don't think there's any better way of putting it. I think this is a pretty even-keeled statement, but I just want to be careful about being super strong in our consensus statement as we send it out.
Thank you for that observation. I'm going to go to staff here.
Thank you, Dr. Moses. So there's a proposal here, lack of bias reduction as it's currently written under people who are making decisions about and within the system have a vested interest in the system being upheld, which is itself under conflict of interest / bias. And there was a proposal made to move that under culture, under the particular barrier that there is an adversarial relationship between police and the public. So maybe before determining the final text, which might be affected by where this is housed, is there a strong opposition to moving this under item 17? And is there general agreement to doing so? Okay. And then the other question, and this is a question for co-chairs, if it's helpful to continue working on this text or to wait till we get there as we go vertically down the document.
Thanks. I think if we are moving it, then I think we can wait to address it in the context of everything else. Okay, in that case, unless there are any other comments on that section, I think we can move on. Do we have anything time-wise that we like absolutely have to do right now?
I think a 5-minute break would be good.
Got it. Okay, yes. Let's take a break. Let's give our interpreters a break.
Yeah. Really appreciate it. I'd like to have staff kick us off here in this next part.
Yeah, so first, thanks to everybody for being here. This is actually our highest attendance at a meeting for almost 6 months. And so we are aware that we're going to run a little over. We did give a little warning. We're going to try to get out of here by 9:20 at latest, hopefully sooner than that. Understand if people need to leave. And part of the reason for that, as I'll start the screen share again, part of the reason for that is just in order to get through the documents by the end of the phase and to have that happen next week, it's important to at least get a little bit of the way through reviewing what the changes are to the other document after we finish this one. We're pretty close to the end of this one, but in order to achieve that, might need to go a little bit longer today. And then also that helps ensure that the commission can stay on the timeline and not have to reschedule briefings that are already scheduled in October. The charter briefing, for example, took about 4 months to schedule. So just want to try and give a little bit of a framing to that and then bring you back to the document. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Commissioner Lavisa.
I'm actually going to jump in here, give
Okay.
Lisa a break.
Thank you, Commissioner Faith.
We're so close to the end. Here we go. There are no edits in this section, so I'm going to read 16. Under culture, police culture values other police officers and the institution of police above the concept of accountability or community concerns. And then folks, please read. And if you have any text changes, raise your hand. Oh, thank you, staff. Okay.
Monica has her hand raised.
Just a quick S after creates. Are we talking about the culture of policing creates, not create?
Thank you. I'm gonna, is there any strong opposition to these 3 changes, adding an S clarifying PPCOA and PPCOA. Any strong opposition?
I don't see any. Oh,
I
nope.
see OB.
OB.
I raised it like not to opposition, but just to add, if you say in the first sentence with the PPA and PPCOA, it should be which work rather than like because it's a plural.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm gonna bundle that in with our some approvals here. Can we get some, no opposition should be core functions include? Thank you. Appreciate the edits, staff.
Might it be possible to just authorize as part of your eventual decision on this to fix all the plurals and things like that as a bundle after the fact? If
Great
it's okay with you, of
suggestion.
course. Thank you.
Okay, so consensus, are we good with these changes and are we good with bundling plurals in the future? For expediency, can I see some spirit fingers or thumbs up? We good? Okay, thanks y'all. Let's move. Okay, starting with investigations. So please read that text and then I will note the changes under history in a moment. Let me know if you have any text changes. Okay, I'm gonna read the new section of history. So because of a power imbalance, the requests of historically marginalized community members have often been ignored or overlooked. Calls for restorative justice between police and community is not possible because we cannot restore what we never had. There has not historically been a perfect or even acceptable policing structure that can be identified as a target for achieving once more. I want to check in with folks. Is there any strong opposition to this language? Or
I don't see
I
any.
don't see any.
great, can we get some thumbs up for consensus if we're good with these changes? Lots of thumbs. Cool, thank you. Moving forward. We are cruising. Um, 17, hold on, I'm sorry, I see Ajay, your comment, I will read it. Also, police most of the time aren't sorry, and you can't have a restorative justice process with an unwilling participant. Well said. Okay, number 17, there is an adversarial relationship between police and the public. Going to let you read the service to institution section. And then as we were chatting above, the recommendation to move this into this section. And I'm going to read this out loud again. So lack of bias reduction, despite officers receiving training on bias, there is no reduction in disparate treatment and little change in officer behavior. Short mandatory trainings for people who already harbor biases may reinforce their already held bias. Commissioner Monica.
To go back to Commissioner Obi's comment, maybe we should have there is no apparent reduction.
Okay, the addition of a parent in front of reduction. Thank you. Commissioner Ajay.
Yeah, I was wondering if, I'm not sure what kind of bias trainings that are happening, right? So is there like racial bias, is there gender bias? And I'm assuming there's not bias around like culture in general, which includes political, ideological, religious, et cetera, because there's definitely a political bias, you know, where we've seen things like, you know, like the man that murdered the anti-fascist protester, and the police were telling the news that he was a homeowner defending his property, or the other anti-fascist person that was also murdered, and they had evidence 2 days after, but it took them a year to arrest the murderer. So there's a clear like ideological, like political bias that's affecting the work that's happening. And there's no training around that. So I don't know exactly like how to put that in there. But yeah, I'm curious, you know, I'd love to hear other people's thoughts about that.
So I want to make sure would you like to, is your suggestion to add some text here?
Yeah, like yeah, referencing specifically the lack of any kind of addressing the ideological bias that affects the police and what the police. Because yeah, we can have like all these racial trainings and all these things, but like, you know, if you're not attacking people on the race, but you're attacking them on the basis that they're against racism, like that's a big difference, you know.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Handelman. You're still on mute.
I rarely mute myself on my computer. I usually use just the phone. So I appreciate the comments that Commissioner Amici has been adding all evening, and agree with them wholeheartedly. I think the issue for me is something that Commissioner Hunter actually put in the chat some time ago, but nobody read it out, about 821. He asked, are we still talking about what we heard? Or are we now including also what we think? And I'm worrying that we're just adding in more of our own observations instead of kind of collecting the thoughts that we got during this phase to put them into this document. And appreciating that Commissioner Amici wasn't there during those conversations and might have added this at that time. I don't know. I'm concerned about us adding more things to the document at this last moment. Or we're about to try to pass this out of commission.
Thanks for that concern, and thank you, Commissioner Eric, for that point. I think, well, I have two responses to that. One, this whole document is accumulation of what we think based on what we heard. It could be just straight out of our brains too. And two, I think that this was something that kind of came up in the discussion last time, was around, we have not discussed a lot around prevention of misconduct versus the accountability system. And so I agree completely, Commissioner Ajay. I do think that it adds kind of a new section or topic around prevention of misconduct, which we haven't quite gotten into. And so I want to be mindful of our time. And so I guess my suggestion is, can we table the prevention of misconduct conversation? Can it go into the garden plot? And I'm happy for there to be, well, if there is strong opposition to that recommendation, like if it feels like it needs to be included in this document, is there anyone who feels strongly that the prevention conversation needs to be included here? Or are we okay with putting those pieces into the garden plot for future discussion points? Okay, effectiveness. Commissioner Sophia.
Thank you. As I'm looking at that, I'm not sure if that we shouldn't revert back to the paragraph that this was in before, because it doesn't really flow under 17.
Thank you. Commissioner Iona.
I just have a question going back to the discussion Mr. Handelman brought up. Was, will we have a little preamble then? Because I've been under the impression that this document was a reflection of our synopsis of kind of what we heard from all the different people who spoke to us. So I just want to make sure that then maybe it'd be a good idea to have a paragraph at the very start of this that explains what this document is. Where did these ideas come from? Are they just from the experts, or are they our ideas too? So just want to put that out there. Maybe that belongs in the garden plot, but just want to just underscore that. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. So I'm thinking out loud and trying to get us to move forward on a quick timeline. And so I don't want to disregard any new comments. I'm going to make a suggestion that the new comments, so what Commissioner Iona just suggested, and the new comment from Commissioner Ajay can be something co-chairs potentially add or address in our next as additions, but if possible, that we can potentially approve this document as it is now with the potential of additions of those sections, just to be mindful of time. Is that something that we can agree to?
Are there jazz hands for that?
Okay.
Consensus.
Great. So I'm just going to rephrase what I just said, is that those two potential additions of just the clarification of what this document is from Commissioner Iona and the conversation around explaining different types of bias under potentially under effectiveness can be potential added sections, which co-chairs will present at a later time. So with that being said, I want to check in on folks. Is there any strong opposition to this, to the inclusion of this lack of bias reduction section as it is written, with the addition of there is no apparent reduction? Strong opposition? None. Is there consensus to add this language to this section? Yes. Great. Okay, let's move forward. Inadequate resources for community oversight. There have been no changes to this section. I'm going to read aloud 18. The current system relies heavily on volunteers and then does not provide them with sufficient support. Please take a moment to read, and if you have any text changes or comments. Okay, seeing none, let's move forward. Reading time, training, and mental health. Please raise your hand if there's any text changes. Okay. Seeing none, let's move forward.
Just a quick note, these comments are not on number 19, they're on the next section, so I'll just not show them for now.
Great. So number 19, community volunteers who participate in the current system often feel their work is ineffectual because it lacks real authority. Give you a moment to read underneath. Any recommended text changes? Okay, seeing none, let's move forward. So
Sophia, I see your comment. I'm gonna get through section 20 and then we'll go to your comment. Some cases involve city council decision-making, and the city council may not be the best entity for community involvement in decision-making. Commissioner Dan suggested a change to language. Sorry, Samir, can you scoochie up? So down to be on 20. So I think the suggestion is for 20 to read. Dan's suggestion was there are questions whether involving city council in decision-making on misconduct complaints is appropriate. I want to clarify, Dan, that your suggestion was to replace the bolded number 20 with that text.
That is correct.
Okay. Commissioner Monica.
Were the only people that raised those questions city council members? And that's it?
Yes, I believe that.
I believe so.
It came from the mayor and Commissioner Rubio. Staff.
It also came up in another briefing, but I cannot recall where. But yeah, primarily through that process. And I believe it was identified at the last meeting of the full commission as being something that's in the charter as well. But the members can speak to that. Might be confused.
Commissioner Christian, did you have your hand up?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I did, and then I'll say what I was going to say. It's a really simple one, so I just wanted to let people have time to discuss. It seems like mine is just a text thing, so I didn't know if it was the right time to say it or not.
Do it.
Okay. I was just going to suggest that if we do change it to there are questions as opposed to city council may not be the best entity, maybe keep the first part to provide some context for people who are just reading it if they're not aware that some cases involve city council in decision making. I don't know if that feels good to people. Just reading it made me feel like maybe it would be good to have that context.
Oh, I see. So your suggestion is some cases involve city council decision making, comma, there are questions whether involving city council.
Yeah, it might need to be reworded a little bit, but yeah, that's the general idea. Yeah. I don't know if that feels okay to people or not. Just that want to flag that.
Thank you. Lovisa.
Well, I see Jade put something in the chat that I really liked. They wrote, maybe city council feels under-equipped to make effective decisions, which is sort of like the root of what I think the city councilors who mentioned this were, they were like, it was, I mean, at least Wheeler being like, we suck at this, we don't have the capacity, we're not well trained. And so I was thinking that I would actually suggest changing it to when cases go to city council or something along those lines, city council is under-equipped to make effective decisions or something along those lines.
Staff still has their hand up, or
Yeah, just wanted to correct the previous statement. Did get confused before. That's not, don't want to mischaracterize the charter there. And also to suggest that perhaps Co-Chair Levisa's question from 2 weeks ago might be a better framing question than the wordsmithing, because if the barrier is, if people have different ideas of what the barrier is, that will affect all the details of the wordsmithing. And I think it's here in the comment. This entire thread, by the way, is part of this item. It shows that way, unfortunately. So if the question is there a barrier at all? Is the barrier that council is not the appropriate place to do it because that deprives civilian oversight of power? Or is the question that council is not appropriate because it is the civilian oversight that does not have power? Is essentially the question that was in this thread. And perhaps adjudicating that might help dictate what language the commission would like to see here. Or if it's either as a barrier at all, perhaps it's a positive thing.
Okay,
So that is a great clarifying. So it seems like there's sort of like three options. We can wordsmith the options momentarily. One is this a barrier at all? Question mark. Like, do we agree that this is a barrier? Number two is it, if it is it that city council is the best place, or city council should be involved in some decision making or should not? And number three is it that they are not well equipped? Commissioner Handelman.
Hi, well, I made the comments here. I would be willing, I like Co-Chair Lloyd's proposal about city council being under-equipped, because that is a barrier, because they're not necessarily reading the cases when they're supposed to. I think we should take out the focus priority paragraph, leave in the expertise paragraph, which reflects Commissioner Lloyd's suggestion. And then I'd like to take a look at the counter proposal I put at the bottom and see if it still is necessary or even appropriate, since we don't have any other counter proposals in the entire document. So I don't know if you can scroll down a little bit more. There we go.
Okay, I'm going to read that out loud, Dan. Counterpoint, the city council has been involved with appeals of misconduct since 1980. There's a value in the elected officials hearing the details of how these cases play out on the street. Thank you, Angie, and how they go through the system and what the end result is. I appreciate your counterpoint. It does honestly a little confuse me to offer one counterpoint at the end. So okay, let's vote on this recommendation that has just moved forward. So Samir, if you wouldn't mind scrolling up a little. So the suggestion is the second or the final language: when cases go to city council is under-equipped to make effective decisions. Can we agree that this is the barrier? Is there strong opposition to this being identified as a barrier? I don't see any. Is there consensus that this is the barrier? I see thumbs. I see consensus. Okay, so we have a new barrier. And then Commissioner Handelman's suggestion, I'm going to read aloud focus and priority. The city council addresses every part of governance of the city of Portland. Its breadth has numerous advantages, including accountability to the public, but it does not focus on these issues, nor can it prioritize its work in this field, making it an inappropriate venue for the direct adjudication of some misconduct allegations and decisions on corrective action. I do agree that this is no longer relevant if we have identified the barrier as under-equipped. So is there strong opposition to deleting focus and priority?
Commissioner Charlie.
Oh, is that a never mind, Charlie?
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Is there consensus to delete this section, focus and priority? I see.
Some, yes.
I see 3 or 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, I think there's consensus. Thanks, y'all. And status update, my friends. This is the last barrier. I know we said 9:20 at the latest, but if we can get through this document, that would be just wonderful.
Of the
Counterpoint. Dan, do you feel strongly about adding this?
I do not. Thank you, Co-Chair Egan. And I think that with the other changes we made, it's not necessary. I also, just for broad suggestion about our process here, I don't know how to do a hand gesture for this. I'm thinking about maybe putting your hand up under your nose like this. But for people who want to stand aside, who aren't strongly opposed or strong, in favor and who aren't twiddling their fingers, for me, it would be good to have some gesture to show that you're standing aside, so that you're showing that you're not trying to block it, but you don't necessarily agree with it. I tried to express that before in the chat for one of the items, but I didn't know how to do it. So I'm not sure how the facilitators feel about that, but I think it would be helpful to have that option.
I think that's really useful, Dan, Commissioner Dan. Thank you for that suggestion. Kind of right at your nose.
Amazing. Thanks, y'all. Okay. Hey, we're so fast. We're into best practices. And there have been no changes or edits since the last time we reviewed this. So what I would like to do is move quick. I'm going to let folks have a minute to read each section. So we're reading transparency, accessibility, and equity. Any comments or text changes? Thanks, team. Moving forward. Civilian staff involvement, qualifications of investigators, review and rigor.
Just a quick staff note, there was a comment that we said we would implement in the last meeting and was implemented. It was adding adding that IPR and investigator and internal affairs investigators, not merely calling the internal affairs investigators good, but also IPR investigators. And that was decided, but not yet implemented. That's it.
Thank you. Any comments or text changes? Thanks so much. Okay. Review and rigor. Comments or text changes? Seeing none, let's move on. There was some suggestions here by Commissioner Dan. I'm going to read them. So under outcomes, for example, there are supervisory investigations for low-level complaints, which cannot lead to officer discipline. Also, if mediation is chosen rather than investigation, the complaint does not lead to discipline. The current system can make policy recommendations. And then under mediation, the system allows for voluntary mediation as an alternative to investigations for some complaints, and also allows for investigations to continue if mediation fails. Is there any strong opposition to the additions made by our colleague? Staff?
Clarifying question for Commissioner Dan. What is the distinction between prior to and as an alternative to in the context of mediation? Is there, I don't know what the impact of that word change might be.
Thank you for asking. The difference is that there is no investigation if mediation happens and succeeds. So it's not happening prior to an investigation because there is no investigation. So that's why I proposed the language change.
Thank you.
Okay, is there consensus to include this language in, Commissioner Christian?
Sorry, just a quick one. Would it make sense to flip these two because outcomes, the addition that Commissioner Handelman suggested in outcomes references mediation. So if we put mediation first to give that a little bit of context, and then afterwards it has, I don't know if the order of these is super important. If it is, we don't have to do that. I'm just curious if that would be something that might make a little bit of sense.
Sure, that's great. I'm going to bundle these three together for some consensus. Moving mediation. Per Christian suggestion, above outcomes.
Dan's recommended language choice. I didn't hear any strong opposition, so want to check in if there's consensus to accept these changes. I see some wiggly fingers and some thumbs up. Great. Okay, Dr. Moses, we made it through the document.
Yay!
Yes.
Congratulations. We're going to go to public comment now.
Oh, we lost all of our members of the public.
Okay. Then I guess we will not go to public comment. So then we'll go to the garden plot.
Sorry.
Oh,
Can
no,
I-
no, no.
Let's do the vote.
I'm so
Right.
sorry. My bad. We need to vote on the entire document.
Yes.
So there's two public comments. The one that's on the document itself before it's approved, and then there's the one later, but we'll get to that.
Yes.
And there's no public. They're gone.
Okay. So we need to approve the document. Is there consensus?
I'm sorry, Dr. Moses, if I can jump in one more time. In March, the commission approved the values and goals document, and as part of approving that, required that before making any other substantive decisions, there be a review of the values and goals. That was a unanimous decision on March 24th. The co-chairs went back and forth on how relevant that this document might be to the barriers identification, but just wanted to quickly at least do that and just ask, and a review is not very well defined. So we're just going to quickly talk about the 6 goals in the next 30 seconds. And then if anyone would like to keep going, we can. But I'm just trying to make sure we honor the vote of the commission there. So equity and inclusion, anti-racism, harm reduction, transparency and trustworthiness, community-centeredness, and effectiveness. And there are all these values, goals, and consideration success criteria. Co-chairs, please correct me if this has changed, but my understanding from full commission co-chairs is that those are less applicable, as those are designed to judge potential recommendations against, as opposed to the assessments that you were making in this document. But I wanted to acknowledge that those exist and encourage members of the public as well as members of the commission to read this at some point, especially as we get into the next phase of work. Does anyone have anything they'd like to circle back to on this? Thank you. I'll pass it back to Dr. Moses.
Thank you so very much. Are there any comments on the values and goals document? There being none, is there any strong opposition to approving the draft areas of agreement with all of the changes? I'm sorry. Would any members of the commission like to revisit any portion of the draft areas of agreement? Commissioner Sophia.
You're muted.
Yes, one of my comments kind of was looked over earlier on when we were going under section 17. I just had made a suggestion that revert back to the section it was under effectiveness, but that was it.
So
Sophia, I think that is something that we are going to approve with the potential of moving and editing this per the conversation of earlier. So I will not forget that, and that can be an addendum.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Christian.
Hi, sorry, I did actually think of one very small one that I forgot to say. It's very small. In the section, I forget what section it is, but I think it's under effectiveness, when it talks about how investigations can go past the 180 days. I don't know if it's under effectiveness specifically, but I remember that it's 180 days specifically. And the reason I wanted to flag it was because after that it says, but investigations can sometimes last for months, but 180 days is months. So I just wasn't sure if that can be an addendum as well. That can be fixed later. I just wanted to flag that in case there's anything for consideration at some point in the future, to change the language to reflect like maybe, but investigations can go beyond this allocated time frame or something like that, you know. Yeah, months longer. That's good. Yeah, I just saw Dan in the chat, but that's a very small one, so that can be added later. I just wanted to flag that. Thank you.
Can we, is there any strong opposition to adding the word longer? Is there an agreement on adding the word longer? Thank you. Any other comments? Remembering that we're going to add and revise after this document is approved. All right. There is no strong opposition to approving the draft areas of agreement with all the changes we've made today incorporated into the text as the Police Accountability Commission areas of agreement on barriers to police accountability and best practices in Portland. Is there general agreement around approving that document? Commissioner Faith, yes, I see, okay. Very good. We have an approved document. Commissioner Dan.
So can you or somebody explain now the things that were tabled but were said that the co-chairs would work on? Are those going to come back to us so we can reapprove the document? What's the process on those other changes that we were just hearing about?
I'm going to defer to co-chairs.
Well, I think correct me if I'm wrong, staff, but I think it seems fine to me if we co-chairs take a look at things, drop whatever language, and then next meeting we look like just very specifically at those maybe 1 or 2 items, and we decide if we have consensus around adding those to the already approved document. So we wouldn't be going back to like the whole document. We would just be going back to maybe the 1 or 2 items.
There's no problem there from the staff perspective, as long as they're essentially yes/no questions rather than, yeah.
Yeah.
And then separately, staff is making the plural changes as well as the replacement of the union terminology. And that's just happening because that was part of your approval. Thank you. So, Dr. Moses, is it okay to move on?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Yes, it is.
so we're not looking at the clock. We're not going to end up talking about this today, but I just want to flag that there is another document which has been referred by the Subcommittee on Research to the full commission. This document has a table of contents that makes it seem a little bit longer than it is, but it is it's about 11 pages long. It is based off of subject matter experts. There are a couple changes showing like this and track changes that may be proposed by members. Some have already been received and collated, and that'll be recirculated with another opportunity for members to give input prior to probably Wednesday of next week, Wednesday night. And then similarly, if the Subcommittee on Research is able to forward out its other document, which is the areas of agreement, the draft areas of agreement on best practices and practices to avoid from other jurisdictions, that will be circulated on Monday night after they refer it, with a request for a roughly 48-hour turnaround if members have proposed changes to make to text in track changes. And to clarify, when we say track changes, we're looking, co-chairs are looking for text changes. Comments are helpful if they're supportive, and we've seen that, good examples of that, but ideally there's a text change associated there too. And that's essentially the next steps for the two documents going into next week. And I'll pass it back to Dr. Moses.
Thank you very much. I want to clarify that we should do member curiosities now.
I'll defer to Co-Chair Faith.
Very good.
I want to respect everyone's time, and we can hold on member curiosities. If you're extra curious, send an email and we'll respond by email.
Thank you so much. Then I would like to go to garden plot recap. And I would like the co-chairs but first, Ayamide, do you have anything on garden plot?
I have a couple, and it was basically just things that will be additions to the document. Basically an additional paragraph that explains what the document is about, or like the bless you, the position. And then a section on prevention of misconduct. So you guys mentioned tabling that. And then also something about expanding on the term biases. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ayamide.
The only thing I have in addition to that is Opie's comment on adding like a legend or an acronym
yes,
or something along those lines for all the
yes, I had that as well. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Any other additions to the garden plot? All right. So I would like to thank all of the members who attended today's meeting for your contributions. So Ayamide, if you could share the last slide, that would be lovely.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Also to the interpreters for supporting access to meetings of the Police Accountability Commission and its subcommittee for all Portlanders.
Sorry.
That's okay.
This is an old one, but here you go. Oh, and now it's showing me something else. There you go.
Yep.
Who?
Right. Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. Okay. Someone else is screen sharing. I don't know what's going on. Sorry.
That's okay. And finally, thank you to the members of the community for attending and contributing your thoughts and questions. Please submit advanced public comment prior to future meetings. If you are not already signed up for email updates, please also sign up to receive updates from the PAC. The next meeting of the full commission, expected to be the final meeting of the fact-finding phase, is scheduled for next Thursday, October 6th. It is now 9:41 and this meeting is adjourned.